In this video, I'm going to be discussing the signs and the symptoms of a bad lower steering shaft on these Alumiduties. Let's get into it. This is my 2019 6.7. It has 223,000 miles on it, and I am on my third lower steering shaft. So the lower steering shaft comes down through your steering column, and it ends right about here where it attaches to your steering gearbox. It's behind these two hoses, and it's just tucked right back in there. You can kind of see it almost behind there. There's the bottom right there. I replaced my lower steering shaft the first time at about 135,000 miles, and at 223 I just put in a new one again. And it's something that took me forever to figure out what was wrong. I'd taken the truck to different shops. I had had it looked at a dealer, at an independent shop, and none of them could figure out what it was. It was driving me nuts. It was like a knocking feeling in the steering wheel or a rattle. You'd feel the rattle in the pedals of the truck, and you just couldn't figure out what it was. And it was always happening when I was driving in grass or on dirt roads or anything that had like a high frequency bump. Now, the key to this issue is it is definitely your lower steering shaft if you're feeling a knocking or a rattle in the steering wheel. So like when you're driving, you'll be holding onto the steering wheel and you'll feel like a hard, it almost sounds like someone's like tapping with a ball peen hammer on the steering column. You also feel it in the pedals. So like it's almost like the pedal is rattling. That's what I thought it was, like pedal rattle for the longest time. It's not that. It's the lower steering shaft. And what happens is you get a bit of play and the U-joints on the shaft that I'm about to show you get worn out, and that's what caused this issue. Now, the one thing I'll say is I have no idea what happens if you just ignore this issue. You know, it's one of those things where you probably could just completely ignore it and let it go for a long time because it's just very minor. You know, like these are what the joints look like. There's no play to speak of necessarily, but in this direction in particular, like it catches and it's very grindy. Like these bushings in here, they just feel smoke. Like this way is okay, this way not so much. So in my case, I just had my brother, who's a mechanic, swap this in. And again, I got about 88,000 miles out of this. I did it at 135, and the truck now has like 223 on it. And so it is these little U-joints, and you can see you almost could replace them, but they're like welded in kind of. So there's no way to really fix this. You just have to buy the whole shindig. And again, it's this joint in here, this U-joint. For whatever reason, Ford just went with a cheap U-joint, and then you just get the grinding and a little bit of play, and it's enough play that it then just gets magnified through your entire steering column. Now, the repair with this lower steering shaft is pretty straightforward. There's two bolts holding it in. You just have to get down there with a bunch of extensions and get it out. My brother, who's an experienced mechanic, did the whole job in about 15 minutes. So if it's something where you're bothered by rattles and noises, like it's, you know, you just spent $80,000 maybe on a brand new Lariat, and you feel that steering rattle or like a knocking in your pedals, that is definitely the sign and symptom of having a bad lower shaft. And if you have a warranty, I would take it to the dealer and get them to look into that, because it's just, to me, that is kind of a ridiculous problem to have. Like, I drive my truck a lot. You know, I like driving the shit out of it. I bought it, that's what I use it for. It's a diesel, it needs to run, and I'm gonna do that. But, you know, even on like a lower mileage truck, like my lower steering shaft was knocking at about 80,000 miles when I had the truck. And while I don't think it's something that would fail catastrophically, like I don't think the U-joint is just gonna let go and you're just not gonna be able to steer your truck, it's still ridiculous that you have this sort of a weird issue in a truck that costs so much money. You know, when you spend money for something like this, you should have a lower steering shaft that works and doesn't make knocking noises in your pedals. The one thing I would say, just if you're trying to diag this yourself, is also check out your top ball joint for your drag link that's on the bottom of the pitman arm. That one is usually known to fail in OEM Ford steering parts. And then just check the rest of your steering. Check your track bar and make sure that the top bushing of your track bar isn't knocking either. There is a potential that you could get a similar knocking from the track bar or the drag link, but I highly doubt it because this is very specific. It's steering column specific rattle knocking sound. And so I would just say make sure you check those, you know, but the telltale sign for this for me is like my steering is making a noise, it's knocking and rattling, but it still feels tight. It's like there's no issue in any of the ball joints or the track bar joints on the steering linkage that's holding everything together. That's fine. It's just what's connected to my steering wheel. Something in there is just not performing well, and that is this lower steering shaft. That is what you should look for. That's how you should think of it. I'm again on my third, and I've diagged it successfully now twice, so I'm sure I'll know when it goes again, probably in another 50 to 60,000 miles. But if you found this video helpful, consider checking out my merch store, PowerStrokeMaintenance.com. I have shirts, I have brake cleaner, and I have that little petcock flat wrench you can use to drain and fill your coolant on the primary and secondary. It makes the job a lot easier. So check that out. I will leave a link below in the comments, and we'll see you next time here on PowerStroke Maintenance. Cheers.